Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So as you can see, I'm highlighting here the date, New York, February 19th and 20th, 1966. So today is February 17th. So just see how we are nicely synced up. So what this Bhagavad-Gita Introduction is, this is practically speaking the first known recording of Prabhupada. Prabhupada arrived in America in September of 1965. And in 1966 February, he had a small little apartment, and somebody gifted him a reel-to-reel tape recorder. And so this introduction, it appears it just came out of him spontaneously. He wasn't giving any classes at this time. He was practically on his own. He had a few friends here and there, and someone gave him this reel-to-reel tape recorder. So this introduction over a 2-day period just came spontaneously from Srila Prabhupada's heart. So he opens with these prayers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitang Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitang Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Uttapadakamalang Sri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitang Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devang Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhan Vitangscha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master and unto the feet of all Vaishnavas. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, along with his elder brother Sanatan Goswami, as well as Raghunath Das and Raghunath Bhatta, Gopal Bhatta, and Srila Jiva Goswami. I offer my respectful obeisances to Lord Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, along with Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar, Srivas, and other associates. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna, along with their associates, Sri Lalita and Vishaka. He Krishna Karana Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. O my dear Krishna, you are the friend of the distressed and the source of creation. You are the master of the gopis and lover of Radharani. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Tapta Kanchana Gurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. I offer my respects to Radharani, whose bodily complexion is like molten gold, and who is the queen of Vrindavan. You are the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, and you are very dear to Lord Krishna. Banja kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanang pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, just like desire trees, and they are full of compassion for the fallen souls. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. I offer my obeisances to Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas and all others in the line of devotion. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhagavad-Gita is known as Gita-Upanishad. It is the essence of all Vedic knowledge and one of the most important Upanishads in Vedic literature. Of course, there are many commentaries in English on Bhagavad-Gita, and one may question the necessity for another one. This present edition can be explained in the following way. Recently, an American lady asked me to recommend an English translation of Bhagavad-Gita. Of course, in America, there are so many editions of Bhagavad-Gita available in English, but as far as I have seen, not only in America, but also in India, none of them can be strictly said to be authoritative, because in almost every one of them, the commentator has expressed his own opinions without touching the spirit of Bhagavad-Gita as it is. Thus, that is how Prabhupada entitles his Bhagavad-Gita. The spirit of Bhagavad-Gita is mentioned in Bhagavad-Gita itself. It is just like this. If we want to take a particular medicine, then we have to follow the directions written on the label. We cannot take the medicine according to our own whim or the direction of a friend. It must be taken according to the directions on the label or the directions given by a physician. Similarly, Bhagavad-Gita should be taken or accepted as it is directed by the speaker himself. The speaker of Bhagavad-Gita is Lord Sri Krishna. He is mentioned on every page of Bhagavad-Gita as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. Of course, the word Bhagavan sometimes refers to any powerful person or any powerful demigod. And certainly here, Bhagavan designates Lord Sri Krishna as a great personality. But at the same time, we should know that Lord Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as is confirmed by all great acharyas or spiritual masters like Shankara Acharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarka Swami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and many other authorities of Vedic knowledge in India. And the Lord himself also establishes himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Bhagavad-Gita and he is accepted as such in the Brahma Samhita and all the Puranas, especially Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Bhagavat Purana. And then Prabhupada, or the editors, included this line, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. That line means Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Krishna is not an expansion of God. Krishna is the original. That's why the phrase Bhagavan Swayam. And that, of course, is from 1st Canto, 3rd chapter, verse 28. This line, by the way, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, is actually the mission statement of the 18,000 shlokas of Srimad Bhagavatam. That one line. Therefore, we should take Bhagavad-Gita as it is directed by the personality of Godhead himself. So now, if any of you remember from what we studied, this section should be familiar to you. And it is something I pointed out many times throughout all the classes. In the 4th chapter of the Gita, chapter 4, verse 1 through 3, the Lord says, Imang vivasvate yogam proktavan aham avyayam vivisvan manave praha manor ikshvakave bravit evang parampara praptang imang rajarshayo vidu sa kale neha mahata yoga nashta parantapa sa evayam mayatedya yoga prokta puratana. Now here's the line I repeated so many times in all our classes. Bhakto sime sakacheti rahasyam hi etad uttamam. So this line I always would point out in so many classes, that this is the qualification for understanding Gita. Why was Arjuna selected to be the recipient of Bhagavad-Gita and not anyone else? Here's the line, Bhakto sime sakacheti. Because Arjuna was bhakta, he was devotee of Krishna, and Arjuna was sakha, friend of Krishna. Those are the only two qualifications. It has nothing to do with Hindu or non-Hindu, nothing to do with man or woman, young or old, whether you know Sanskrit or no. If you have these two qualifications, devotee and friend of Krishna, you are now eligible to understand Gita. Here, the Lord informs Arjuna that this system of yoga, Bhagavad-Gita, was first spoken to the sun god, and the sun god explained it to Manu, and Manu explained it to Ikshvaku. And in that way, by disciplic succession, one speaker after another, this yoga system has been coming down. But in the course of time, it has become lost. Consequently, the Lord has to speak it again, this time to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He tells Arjuna that he is relating this supreme secret to him because Arjuna is his devotee and his friend. The purport of this is that Bhagavad-Gita is a treatise which is especially meant for the devotee of the Lord. There are three classes of Transcendentalists, namely the Jnani, the Yogi, and the Bhakta, or the Impersonalist, the Meditator, and the Devotee. Here the Lord clearly tells Arjuna that he is making him the first receiver of a new parampara, disciplic succession, because the old succession was broken. It was the Lord's wish, therefore, to establish another parampara in the same line of thought that was coming down from the sun god to others, and it was his wish that his teaching be distributed anew by Arjuna. He wanted Arjuna to become the authority in understanding Bhagavad-Gita. So, we see that Bhagavad-Gita is instructed to Arjuna, especially because Arjuna was a devotee of the Lord, a direct student of Krishna, and his intimate friend. Therefore, Bhagavad-Gita is best understood by a person who has qualities similar to Arjuna's. That is to say, he must be a devotee in a direct relationship with the Lord. As soon as one becomes a devotee of the Lord, he also has a direct relationship with the Lord. That is a very elaborate subject matter, but briefly it can be stated that a devotee is in a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in one of 5 different ways. Number 1, one may be a devotee in a passive state. One may be a devotee in an active state. One may be a devotee as a friend. One may be a devotee as a parent. And one may be a devotee as conjugal lover. Arjuna was in a relationship with the Lord as friend. Of course, there is a gulf of difference between this friendship and the friendship found in the material world. This is a transcendental friendship which cannot be had by everyone. Of course, everyone has a particular relationship with the Lord, and that relationship is evoked by the perfection of devotional service. But in the present status of our life, not only have we forgotten the Supreme Lord, but we have forgotten our eternal relationship with the Lord. Every living being, out of the many, many billions and trillions of living beings, has a particular relationship with the Lord eternally. And that is called Swarupa. By the process of devotional service, one can revive that Swarupa. And that stage is called Swarupa Siddhi, perfection of one's constitutional position. So, Arjuna was a devotee, and he was in touch with the Supreme Lord in friendship. Now, how Arjuna accepted Bhagavad Gita should be noted. His manner of acceptance is given in the 10th chapter, verses 12 to 14. Arjuna uvacha parang brahma parang dhama pavitrang paramang bhavan purushang shastvatam divyam adi devam ajang vibhum ahustvang rishayak sarve devashir naradastata asito devalo vyasa swayam chaiva bravishime sarvametadritang manye yanmang vadasi keshava nahite bhagavan vyaktim vidur deva nadanava. Arjuna said, "You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages, such as Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyas, confirmed this truth about you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me. O Krishna, I totally accept as truth all that you have told me. Neither the demigods nor the demons, O Lord, can understand your personality. After hearing Bhagavad-Gita from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Arjuna accepted Krishna as Parang Brahma, the Supreme Brahman. Just to refresh your memory, we went over this several times in our classes. Brahman means spirit. So here, Parang Brahma means Krishna is the Supreme Spirit or the Supreme Soul. Prabhupada further explains. Every living being is Brahman, but the Supreme Living Being or the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Brahman. Parangdhamma means that he is the supreme rest or abode of everything. Pavitra means that he is pure, untainted by material contamination. Purusham means that he is the supreme enjoyer. Shasvatam, original. Divyam, transcendental. Adi Devam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ajam, the unborn. Vibhum, the greatest. Now, one may think that because Krishna was the friend of Arjuna, Arjuna was telling him all this by way of flattery. But Arjuna, just to drive out this kind of doubt from the minds of the readers of Bhagavad Gita, substantiates these praises in the next verse when he says that Krishna is accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not only by himself, but by authorities like Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyasadeva. These are great personalities who distribute Vedic knowledge as it is accepted by all acharyas. Therefore, Arjuna tells Krishna that he accepts whatever he says to be completely perfect. Sarvam etad ritang manye. I accept everything you say to be true. Arjuna also says that the personality of the Lord is very difficult to understand and that he cannot be known even by the great demigods. This means that the Lord cannot even be known by personalities greater than human beings. So how can a human being understand Lord Sri Krishna without becoming his devotee? Therefore, Bhagavad Gita should be taken up in a spirit of devotion. One should not think that he is equal to Krishna, nor should he think that Krishna is an ordinary personality or even a very great personality. Lord Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So according to the statements of Bhagavad Gita, or the statements of Arjuna, the person who is trying to understand Bhagavad Gita, we should at least theoretically accept Sri Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here, Prabhupada is pointing out, even if you cannot accept that Krishna is God when you begin, just so that you understand Bhagavad Gita properly, at least theoretically, you work under that premise. Then you'll be able to understand Bhagavad Gita. But if you cannot even theoretically accept Krishna as God, then you're never going to crack Bhagavad Gita. So this is very significant how Prabhupada is preaching. Prabhupada is trying to preach to everyone, gives everyone an opportunity. And with that submissive spirit, we can understand Bhagavad-Gita. Unless one reads Bhagavad-Gita in a submissive spirit, it is very difficult to understand Bhagavad-Gita because it is a great mystery. Just what is Bhagavad-Gita? The purpose of Bhagavad-Gita is to deliver mankind from the nescience of material existence. Nescience, for those who don't know, means ignorance. Every man is in difficulty in so many ways, as Arjuna also was in difficulty in having to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. If you recall from our beginning lessons, we learned that Arjuna was so confused, perplexed, and overcome by lamentation as well as compassion. Arjuna refused to fight. In fact, he dropped his bow and told Krishna at the end of chapter 1, "I shall not fight." Arjuna surrendered unto Sri Krishna, and consequently this Bhagavad Gita was spoken. So that happened in chapter 2. I also mentioned that many times in our classes. When Arjuna said to Krishna, "Shishyaste ham shadi mang twang prapanam." When Arjuna said, "Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you." And I mentioned many times, that was the turning point, the first turning point of Bhagavad Gita. There were a few turning points. That was the first one. Not only Arjuna, but every one of us is full of anxieties because of this material existence. Our very existence is in the atmosphere of non-existence. Actually, we are not meant to be threatened by non-existence, for our existence is eternal. But somehow or other, we are put into asat. Asat refers to that which does not exist. And the opposite word is sat. Sat means eternal, that which exists. In chapter 2, it was pointed out early when Krishna began his instructions. That which has temporary existence is called asat. It doesn't really exist. It has temporary existence, like our material body. But sat, which refers to Brahman, the soul, that has eternal existence. For the soul, there is no past, present, future. It always exists. But the body has past, present, and future. Out of so many human beings who are suffering, there are a few who are actually inquiring about their position as to who they are, why they are put into this awkward position, and so on. Unless one is awakened to this position of questioning his suffering, unless he realizes that he doesn't want suffering, but rather wants to make a solution to all suffering, then one is not to be considered a perfect human being. Humanity begins when this sort of inquiry is awakened in one's mind. In the Brahma Sutra, so Brahma Sutra is another name for Vedanta Sutra. In the Brahma Sutra, this inquiry is called Brahma Jigyasa. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Every activity of the human being is to be considered a failure unless one inquires about the nature of the Absolute. Therefore, those who begin to question why they are suffering, or where they came from, and where they shall go after death, are proper students for understanding Bhagavad-Gita. The sincere student should also have a firm respect for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a student was Arjuna. Lord Krishna descends specifically to re-establish the real purpose of life when man forgets that purpose. Even then, out of many, many human beings who awaken, there may be one who actually enters the spirit of understanding his position, and for him this Bhagavad-Gita is spoken. Actually, we are all swallowed by the tigress of nescience, but the Lord is very merciful upon living entities, especially human beings. To this end, Krishna spoke Bhagavad-Gita, making his friend Arjuna his student. Being an associate of Lord Krishna, Arjuna was above all ignorance. But Arjuna was put into ignorance on the battlefield of Kurukshetra just to question Lord Krishna about the problems of life, so that the Lord could explain them for the benefit of future generations of human beings and chalk out the plan of life. So that's significant. Arjuna allowed himself to be placed into the ignorant position, meaning how he was behaving in chapter 1, confused, bewildered, lamenting, overwhelmed, over-compassionate. All those emotions and that state of mind, Arjuna allowed himself to be put into ignorance, playing the role Krishna wanted for him for right here, so that Bhagavad-Gita could be spoken. Then man could act accordingly and perfect the mission of life. The mission of human life. So now we come to the next section. This long introduction is going to take maybe 3 classes. I can see it's going to take at least 3. So now Prabhupada has ended one train of thought. Now the next section is what the first sentence is saying here. The subject of Bhagavad-Gita entails the comprehension of 5 basic truths. So here we could say we're coming to the Vedanta, the conclusion of what is Bhagavad-Gita. What is the Bhagavad-Gita actually teaching? So it's 5 basic truths. First of all, the science of God is explained. Then, the constitutional position of the living entities, or jivas. There is Ishvara, which means the controller, and there are jivas, the living entities which are controlled. If a living entity says that he is not controlled, but that he is free, then he is insane. The living being is controlled in every respect, at least in his conditioned life. So in the Bhagavad-Gita, the subject matter deals with Ishwar, the supreme controller, or God, and the jivas, the controlled living entities. Prakriti, material nature, and time, the duration of existence of the whole universe, or the manifestation of material nature, and karma, activity, are also discussed. The cosmic manifestation is full of different activities. All living entities are engaged in different activities. From Bhagavad-Gita, we must learn what God is, what the living entities are, what Prakriti is, what the cosmic manifestation is, how it is controlled by time, and what are the activities of the living entities. So those are the 5 subject matters. Ishvara, God; Jiva, the living entity; Prakriti, material nature; Kala, time; and Karma, activity. Out of these 5 basic subject matters in Bhagavad Gita, it is established that the Supreme Godhead, or Krishna, or Brahman, or the Supreme Controller, or Paramatma, you may use whatever name you like, is the greatest of all. The living beings are in quality like the Supreme Controller. What is that quality? Spiritual. When we say living being, we're not referring to the body, we're referring to the soul. So the soul is spiritual in quality, just as Krishna is. For instance, the Lord has control over the universal affairs of material nature, as will be explained in the later chapters of Bhagavad Gita. Material nature is not independent. She is acting under the directions of the Supreme Lord. As Lord Krishna says, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. That was in chapter 9, verse 10. This material nature is working under my, Krishna, direction. When we see wonderful things happening in the cosmic nature, we should know that behind this cosmic manifestation, there is a controller. Nothing could be manifest without being controlled. It is childish not to consider the controller. For instance, a child may think that an automobile is quite wonderful to be able to run without a horse or other animal pulling it. But a sane man knows that the nature of the automobile's engineering arrangement. He also knows that behind the machinery, there is a man, a driver. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the driver under whose direction everything is working. That reminds us of what we learned in our last class. I pointed out a famous verse, Yantra Rudani Mayaya. In our last class, I pointed out that Krishna says, I am situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma, and I am directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated on a machine made of material energy. So last week I pointed out the body is a machine. The soul is sitting in the car or machine of the body. Now the jivas, or living entities, have been accepted by the Lord, as we will note in later chapters, as his parts and parcels. A particle of gold is also gold. A drop of water from the ocean is also salty. And similarly, we, the living entities, being part and parcel of the Supreme Controller, Ishvara, or Bhagavan, Lord Sri Krishna, have all the qualities of the Supreme Lord in minute quantity. And that is how we are different. That is why we are simultaneously God and not God at the same time. We're God in the sense that God is spiritual, we are spiritual. That makes us one with God. The difference is Krishna's quantity is immeasurable. Our quantity, or the actual word potency, is fragmental. Because we are minute Ishwaras, subordinate Ishwaras, we are trying to control nature, as presently we are trying to control space or planets. And this tendency to control is there because it is in Krishna. But although we have a tendency to lord it over material nature, we should know that we are not the supreme controller. This is explained in Bhagavad-Gita, just like right now. In the state of Texas here in the United States, they're undergoing extreme severe cold. Millions of people are without heat. Millions of people without food. They're suffering immeasurably right now in Texas. Now, if any one of them was God, they could immediately counteract everything. But because we are not God, as he says here, we are subordinate, we have nothing to do except tolerate or try to figure out a solution. This is explained in Bhagavad-Gita. Next topic. What is material nature? This is also explained in Gita as inferior prakriti, inferior nature. That was mentioned in chapter 7. The living entity is explained as superior prakriti. Prakriti means energy. So because the soul is spiritual, therefore it is superior energy. Prakriti is always under control, whether inferior or superior. Prakriti is female, and she is controlled by the Lord, just as the activities of a wife are controlled by the husband. Prakriti is always subordinate, predominated by the Lord, who is predominator. The living entities and material nature are both predominated, controlled by the Supreme Lord. According to the Gita, the living entities, although parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are to be considered prakriti. So we are energy. And you've heard me say more than once, since we are energy, we are female. Look at this. Prakriti is female. So although we have different dresses as man and woman, actually we're all female. From this point of view, that energy, prakriti, is female. Very interesting concept here. This is again is Vedanta, the conclusion. So keep in mind, we're all female because we are energy. This is clearly mentioned in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita. Aparayamitastvang yang prakriting vidhi me param jiva bhutam. The material nature is my inferior prakriti, but beyond this is another prakriti, jiva bhutam, the living entity. Material nature itself is constituted by 3 qualities: the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of ignorance. Above these modes, there is eternal time. And by a combination of these modes of nature, and under the control and purview of eternal time, there are activities which are called karma. These activities are being carried out from time immemorial, and we are suffering or enjoying the fruits of our activities. For instance, suppose I am a businessman and have worked very hard with intelligence and have amassed a great bank balance. Then I am an enjoyer. But then, say I have lost all my money in business. Then I am a sufferer. Similarly, in every field of life, we enjoy the results of our work or we suffer the results. This is called karma. Ishwar, the Supreme Lord, Jiva, the living entity, Prakriti, nature, Kala, eternal time, and Karma, activity, are all explained in Bhagavad-Gita. Out of these five, the Lord, the living entities, material nature, and time are eternal. The manifestation of Prakriti may be temporary, but it is not false. Some philosophers say that the manifestation of material nature is false. Here, Prabhupada is referring to the Mayavadis, headed by Shankara Acharya. So that was the Shankaracharya philosophy, that the material world is false. But according to the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, or according to the philosophy of the Vaishnavas, this is not so. The manifestation of the world is not accepted as false. It is accepted as real, but temporary. It is likened unto a cloud which moves across the sky, or the coming of the rainy season, which nourishes grains. As soon as the rainy season is over, and as soon as the cloud goes away, all the crops which were nourished by the rain dry up. Similarly, this material manifestation takes place at a certain interval, stays for a while, and then disappears. Such are the workings of Prakriti. But this cycle is working eternally. Therefore, Prakriti is eternal. It is not false. The Lord refers to this as my Prakriti. This material nature is the separated energy of the Supreme Lord. And similarly, the living entities are also the energy of the Supreme Lord, although they are not separated, but eternally related. So the Lord, the living entity, material nature, and time are all interrelated and are eternal. However, the other item, karma, is not eternal. The effects of karma may be very old indeed. We are suffering or enjoying the results of our activities from time immemorial. But we can change the results of our karma or our activity, and this change depends on the perfection of our knowledge. We are engaged in various activities. Undoubtedly, we do not know what sort of activities we should adopt to gain relief from the actions and reactions of all these activities. But this is also explained in Bhagavad-Gita. So I'm going to end here, and this is the end of our first session. And now I'll turn the program over to Shailesh Maharaj.